Okay, I am live. And of course, we need to start with the tradition, which is a sugar-free soda. Because when you're sitting for hours and coding, why do you need the calories, really? This is a black cherry soda. It's the first time I'm trying it. Oh my gosh, the carbonation. Okay, let me say welcome in the chat. And verbally, welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome. Thank you for joining me here. I'm going to flip the desktop audio on, and today is an interesting day. I'm going to be working on some graphics related stuff. So if this is your first time joining, this is a live dev stream series where we work on a game called Kalling Kingdom. It is a turn-based strategy game, basically, also kind of a simulation game. It is a city building game, so you'll see how it works, but basically you need to build out a town in a fantasy setting. You need to put down buildings, attract people to move to the town, and then you will have a number of decisions to face with world events that take place throughout the different turns. So I also have a mug of coffee, or not coffee, I'm sorry. It says coffee and chill on the mug. That threw me off. But it's some tea, some Earl Grey tea. Really essential, and, 0 calories as well, because when you're sitting for hours and coding, why do you need the calories? So today, like I said, I'm going to be working on some 2D textures, and it should be interesting. So basically, I'm working on the farm. There are 5 buildings in the game. I'm working on getting the visual look of the farm going, and so before we get rolling into that, I also just want to talk for a second about where these streams are going, by the way. Just an update for you of sorts. This will be one of the last streams that we will have for the Kalling Kingdom dev streams, because the game is set to go into early access on July 27th. So right now I'm streaming today, Sunday, on the 21st in the afternoon. And it will be going into early access this next coming weekend here on the 27th on itch.io. Now, that being said, there are a few more dev streams coming, or a couple more, I guess. There's one on July 25th at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and another on August 1st, which is also a Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. And the stream schedule is always here on elegacorp.com, but I am at a crossroads because I need to be figuring out what is going to be happening with the series of dev streams. Because basically, as the game approaches release and as it approaches launch, I'm going to scale back on the dev streams because there is a little bit of overhead to them as far as getting set up, recording them, uploading them. Occasionally, I will do like very, very limited video editing on them, like sometimes maybe just to clean up audio or to cut out some sort of a technical mishap. And so in those cases, it does take up a little bit of time to do the live streams. And now that the game is supposed to be in the home stretch toward the release date, I would like to kind of cut out the overhead so that everything can be efficient. So after August 1st, what happens? I don't know. I would like to keep doing live streams like sometimes. And I do have some of you who pop into the stream pretty regularly to see how things are going, and I do appreciate that. But if there's anything that any of you who regularly watch the streams would like to see, please let me know. Probably the best way to do that is to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @ScottLee, and if you see this icon with my lovely face, and you may or may not be able to tell that that is a electrified LED Pac-Man background behind me and kind of illuminating me there. But if you find this and it's the @ScottLee URL, you've reached the right place. So You can reach out to me there and let me know what you would like to see on the streams. Remember that all of the recorded streams, if you look at elegacorp.com here under the community tab and go to YouTube, there is an Elega Corp YouTube channel, and all of the recorded streams end up there. They do not stay on Twitch very long, so that's just something to keep in mind. There on the left, there are the recent blog posts, and I have many more of those on the way as well. Okay, so let me get started. This is not the usual time that I stream, unfortunately, and so I'm expecting a few people to kind of trickle in here and there, but I do know that, you know, normally the trend has been that I'd stream Thursday evenings, and that's kind of what I had switched the schedule to. So I apologize I missed this last Thursday, but here we are. So I'm working on the farm, and some of you have seen this previously. In fact, in one of the previous live streams, I was working on it as well. I have redone this building 3 times now, and I have no idea if I'm going to redo it again, but if I do a quick render here and hopefully resize the window so that it makes more sense, this is basically what the sprite is ending up looking like. There's an ugly paint job here in the middle, but don't pay too much attention to that. The main idea is that this is kind of based off of a concept sketch. This is meant to be like a wooden barrel over here. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done on that. There's a nice little plant set up here, and there's some sort of polygonal plant-like objects over here to represent crops. So, you know, it's a challenging process going through working on the artwork for this, because I have to decide what approach to take. I certainly don't want to run after realism, not only because it's vastly time-consuming and extraordinarily difficult, but also because this is not that kind of game. But at the same time, I also don't think going overly simplistic to the point of it looking like Monopoly game pieces is the right choice either. So I have to strike some sort of a balance in between those things, and so that's sort of what I'm in the process of doing here. And so I actually have made quite a bit of progress, though. There's some important things with the mesh that have been changed, and it turns out that on the previous version of this, part of the reason I kind of had to redo it is because there was some broken geometry. And now I've done a few little things, so like if I can get the right thing selected. Oh, come on. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Maybe if I select all. There we go. So I separated the roof from the model, and I just wanted to show you that it was separate there. And then the rest of the house is done kind of separately. Part of the reason I did that is because there's kind of like a bevel applied to the roof model. And then I wanted to get a nice bevel applied to the farmhouse object down here, but I don't think it quite worked. Yeah. I like how this door came out. Yeah, like so, and before I talk about the door, yeah, the bevel, what I was trying to do is trying to get like a bevel along these edges. And I kind of gave up on it. I probably needed to kind of do things in a different order in order for that to really kind of work. But I still think like I'm kind of happy enough with it. I think one thing I may want to do is kind of come over here to the side and add some detail over here. But I haven't really decided if I can kind of do that quickly enough. In fact, I may already be beyond that point. Because part of what we're going to be doing today is watching me work on the coloring of all this. This is painted, like the door frame is painted, and part of the door is also kind of smudgily painted, really just to get a rough idea, because I'm going to be going into Photoshop here in a few minutes and kind of working on it from there. And so I was doing that earlier, like part of this morning, and then And then here, I do really like how the door is coming out. If you were to like zoom way in on this, this is not a real door handle at all. It's really just a beveled, like rectangular block. But it works fine because you're really going to be seeing it from like this size, right? So there's only so much detail that needs to be put in here because this is all going to end up being rendered, and when it gets rendered, the render is orthographic. So the perspective is taken out, and it looks acceptable, right? Because you basically you're going to be viewing this image. Sorry, I keep forgetting this is probably getting cut off. You're going to be viewing this image at like, I don't know, whatever size you're viewing it at right now, you'll be viewing it at like a 30th of that size or something. I don't know. Ugh. I see a couple of you popping into chat. Welcome. Feel free to throw out any questions. And by the way, I said this in the beginning, but I'll say it like one more time again. This is one of the last few streams that I'm having for this game's development, because it's going into early access on the 27th, and then I'm shooting for a late August release at this point. And I'll just continue working on it. But as far as the dev streams, I really want to buckle down and focus for a while. But if you have any questions or anything about anything at all, please feel free to throw out the questions now. Because if you don't throw them out now, there's only 2 more streams to kind of get them out. And so even if it's unrelated, I would prefer that you go ahead and ask, because who knows if we'll get to a particular area that you're interested in. And I'd like to, still have that engagement with you before I kind of slow down on the streams. So anyway, yeah, so I was talking about this door. The sort of door frame going on here is kind of nice. I like how that kind of turned out. But it needs some detail, ideally, that it really doesn't have right now. And in fact, I did do kind of a test of this. Give me a second. I would like to fire up Unity and show you just for a second what I'm talking about here. But I'm going to cut out kind of the video feed for here for just a second. But I did want to show kind of like how things were coming with the current build that I'm working on. I did a render, and the render is not of an orthographic render. So you're going to see a sprite that is rendered in perspective, which it doesn't quite look right, and it's not, obviously it's not the look that I'm going for, but I still would like to show you. So give me a second. I'm pulling up Unity. Okay, there we go. So let me fire up the game. Oh, there we go. Also, you may not have seen this if you kind of tuned in to some of the earlier stuff, but this is the new menu screen. And from here on out, in addition to the gameplay tweaks, I'm really going to be trying to focus on the visuals, just to get a nicer presentation as things go on, and really remove the prototypey sort of look to things. So you notice there's a farm sprite, and this is just like an earlier stage of the model, and the farm itself is just colored like a big ugly orange. And this was really just to kind of see at this early phase like how things are going, because it kind of shows a little more what the real sort of gameplay feel is going to be to having this building here. And of course the bounding box needs to kind of be readjusted from what it was, because I can take this all the way up here before it cuts me off, and obviously that's not right. It's a much bigger image than the prototype image was, but right now you can still kind of get a rough idea. And this is what I was talking about kind of the idea of a almost like a Monopoly game piece type of look, which, looking at this, I want to avoid. I don't want that in there. So But all that being said, I really like the way that these little details come out here, where there's kind of a little bit of detail put into them, but you can't really tell. You can't really see at this granularity what the detail was, but you can still kind of tell that there is detail there. And then there's the crops, right? And you can't really tell what went into the crops, but it still looks very much like some sort of plant shapes. And I think it kind of works out that way. If I were to zoom in, you can kind of see, and it still looks okay. But yeah, I don't know. I like the way that it's coming along. I mean, especially given my skill level, I'm like, this is the first actual game I'm doing modeling for, and otherwise, like, the last time I did modeling before working on this game was literally when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old or something. Like, it was years and years ago. Maybe I was 15, actually. So, and I'm 31 now, so that was over 15 years ago that I was doing any sort of 3D modeling. At the time, in my, like, that early phase, it was done with 3D Studio Max, and frankly, I probably liked that better, but now that I'm running a legitimate business, can't really afford 3D Studio Max. Not until things start doing a lot better. So anyway. Okay, so all this being said, let me go into Photoshop. So, the ugly paintwork had begun, but like I said, that was really just kind of a guiding starting point. So I've done like a UV unmap here in Photoshop. I didn't do the UV unmap. I did the UV unmapping in Blender, obviously. And this is the image for the base color image here in Photoshop. And so what I've begun to do is to start getting rid of the smudgy lines here. And there are rectangles that are placed over the individual images, and I've put them at an opacity of 50 so I can kind of see what I'm doing. But I'm going to go into these and kind of continue putting together the rectangles, because what I'm going to do afterward is I want to get the pixel space perfect and exact for doing some nicer painting. And I need the layout to be perfect before I really start getting into things, And another nice thing about the opacity is I can see if the pixels just barely don't line up. And I want the image to be as perfect as possible. So like you can see that, like, if this was originally based on, like, if this was originally coloring that was done across individual polygons and I did paint inside of Blender, there's points where it would have escaped this natural vertical line. And so part of what I'm doing here is I'm cleaning that up with a brush. And I really do have to worry about every individual pixel. But basically the idea is to go through, do the cleanup, get the layout of the color shapes done, and then kind of come back through and do a sweep where I can really do some nicer looking work with the coloring, because a lot of these little smudges here were just done as placeholder material so that I can do some much nicer work on the texture for the building. And so here what we're looking at, once we kind of go back into Blender, you'll see later, is we're looking at the basically the UV unwrap, and this is the coloring for the door frame that I'm kind of going through and adjusting right now. So one of the fun things about this stream that I really like, and I also think that, you know, you only really see this with individual game developers who have to do every single thing inside of their game, is that it can take years and years to complete some of these projects. And originally when I set out to do this game, you know, I'm wearing all the hats, I'm doing all the stuff in the game, the visuals, planning on doing some original music, doing all the coding, obviously, and you know, it's a ton of work. And but the cool thing about that is that if I'm showing this on live stream, then I can wear all those hats, and every stream can kind of be a little bit different. I can have some streams that are coding streams. I can have graphic design and 3D modeling streams, you know. And now granted, when you're watching the coding streams, you're watching my strength. When you're watching this, if you were an experienced graphic artist, then you would probably be infuriated as you watch my very noobish skills here. But or not infuriated, but maybe just bored or impatient, waiting for me to do things that experienced 2D artists have figured out much faster ways to do. But I know that that's the case, right? And I accept that that's kind of how it is. Is that, you know, there's just going to be that skill gap, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna get another shape in here and save as I go. But yeah, you know, like I accept that there are these gaps in my skill, and if you really want to do this on your own, you have to accept that. You have to accept that some things you're going to be pretty good at, because those are the things that you spend most of your hours doing. But other things, just no, not really. Other things you will suck at, and you know, sometimes the answer is expand the team, get more people who can do those things, and people who, like, that is their skill, right? But I also like avoiding expanding any kind of a team, because I mean, there's a few reasons for it, but I mean, like, I think part of it is that, you know, almost everyone you work with has some level of ego. They want to see their mark on the work. And I can understand that. You know, it's the same reason I'm basically working by myself, is that I want to have that creative control, right? And but you see that with other artists who, like, you know, they may figure that this is not going to be anything very significant, and so especially for that reason they want to have their mark on it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, I still like to exercise that control myself as well, right? And so and the other thing is, I think that if you want to be a general designer, if you want to do the whole indie thing, it is good to have a little bit of a jack of all trades mentality about things. So now I'm wondering, is this color here, is this particular block on the UV map what I think it is or not? Let me look in Blender here. Okay, so here's everything. The UV map. So this thing up here, yeah, that's basically going up to here. So this is going off into the wrong area here. So I need to keep that in mind when I go into Photoshop. I need to clean that up. That's just, yeah, that's just wrong right there. So that needs to be cleaned up. Yeah, and so like all the texture work that I'm doing today is, who knows if this is the right way to do it. I guess this is one way to do it, but you know, I don't know. Who knows? If people are experienced, then they're gonna know what a better way is, I guess. But I know that this is one way for me that is kind of working so far, and I'm just rolling with it. This idea of like, well, let's go into Blender, let's do like a really ugly vertex paint to get like a rough idea, and then go into Photoshop and just start polishing, right? But anyway, so I was talking about, you know, teams before, and with teams, yeah, creative control is one thing, but the other thing is money. Like, people want to be compensated, right? Which is there's also nothing wrong with that. And I really just don't have the money to pay them. And so when you're on a budget, you might end up just doing everything yourself. And there's some people who don't care about money, but if they don't care about money, like I said, they probably care about something else, right? Something else that has the potential to dramatically impact the project in a way that maybe you intended as the kind of the main designer behind it, or maybe not. And if not, then you have to make the decision of whether or not that trade-off is worth it. And to find the right person to work on a project, that takes a lot of time, right? And so I just kind of look at all that, and I just don't really want to deal with it if I don't have to. I completely acknowledge that when you build out larger teams, there are more things that you can do with that, and that ultimately you're able to do more when you're working together than if you're just by yourself, like if you do it right. And I totally understand that, and I still just do everything on my own at the moment. So there you go. I don't know. Building teams are complicated, okay? And if you can do without it, like, you might as well. Because you have to worry about contracts, you have to worry about royalties, compensation, funding, all this stuff that, you know, like, if my goal is to make what I want to make, then, like, I want as few obstacles in my way as possible, really. And having to worry about building a team, even though, you know, you can do something super great, it's time consuming, and it's also kind of a skill that I'm not very strong in, right? So I think that's kind of along the lines of what I meant to say with all that. So here what I'm having to do is I'm having to do like very basically cleaning stuff up with a brush. This is very much like watching someone paint on a canvas, and they're doing these tiny little detail adjustments, and and that's just what it is. This is art in progress at a pixel level, granted, which is not very fun all of the time. So I've already kind of zoomed out at this point. I wonder where I am now. Basically, like, the overall colors, there's actually some parts of this, like maybe down here at the bottom, where it kind of begins to take on some resemblance of wood. But I think I need to do a lot of additional work with the lines and the colors. And this is just ugly down here. I gotta like wipe all this out. So my plan is to kind of come back in here and do some like some kind of a brick pattern for the majority of the farmhouse here. And take out that 1 pixel. There we go. And the brick pattern, I think the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to draw, basically draw out some of the way that art looks by hand, scan it in, bring it into Illustrator, kind of vectorize it, turn it into some solid form lines that then get rasterized in Photoshop into like an actual PNG image or something. And then basically like kind of overlay that and maybe kind of soften it here on the texture, if that makes sense. And then that way I can get, once I combine that with kind of coloring, once I kind of combine that with coloring, hopefully I'll be able to get the look that I'm going for here. Which is, again, like I don't want to go overboard with realism, but I also don't want it to look super cartoony. I kind of want it to be just a simplistic sort of form of whatever the building is supposed to be. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of isometric games kind of do that style. Like if you think about Rollercoaster Tycoon, if you think about the artwork from that game, or if any of you have played Production Line, which is fantastic, by the way. If you haven't played Production Line and you like isometric strategy management games, go to Steam, buy Production Line. It's from Positech Games, aka Cliff Harris, who's a really great designer. He's like turning into one of my favorite game designers these days. But that's a fantastic game. You basically just like manage a car factory in the game, and it's so fun. But anyway, the graphical style in that, and then kind of Rollercoaster Tycoon, they're kind of the same. I guess obviously one of the main differences is in the first Rollercoaster Tycoon, that was made in the 90s, and so it's just way lower resolution and way kind of like lower tech than what we can do today. If you go and you play Production Line, in my opinion, Production Line gives you like a modern version of that style of 2D sprites. So it's a great game. And I think it's out of early access now. I played it originally when it was in early access, and I've watched like developer blogs a little bit here and there of how it turned out. And it's like way better now than whenever I played it. And when I played it, it was already like so much fun. It was ridiculously fun. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. Actually, let me go over here first. Kind of come up here and do some fine adjustment in here on the pixels. Oh, gosh, yeah, and I just have such a tremendous amount of additional respect for artists now, like especially pixel artists. Like, holy crap, man! Like, they do such great work, and just knowing kind of what their process is for doing that work. Oh my gosh, good for them, honestly. they all don't get paid enough. That's the only thing that I know after like trying to do some of this myself. And I also don't want this to look like programmer art. I hear everyone, every like person where coding is their strength, that's one thing that you hear them say. Oh, so I made a prototype and at the beginning it was programmer art. I don't want this to look like programmer art. Obviously I know it's not going to look super amazing, but it needs to look good enough where someone doesn't automatically point to it and say, that's programmer art. If they do that, as a new person who knows nothing about the game, then I have failed, basically. And even though I'm a programmer, I don't want to make programmer art. That's not what I'm trying to do. I need to do better than that. Okay. All right, and down here. So after all this is cleaned up, what I'm going to do is kind of zoom out and start. I'm basically working on the door frame first. And I think for the door frame, because of how far away you're viewing all this from, I don't need to do a lot with it. I think I just need maybe a few shades of like a wooden color in there, and it's gonna look okay. So at this point in the project, I think I don't know. I haven't looked here that recently, but I have to be coming up on at least 100 hours spent on the game as a whole. And my goal was definitely to knock all of this out pretty fast. By the time I get 200 hours in, I want this to feel pretty complete. And that's part of the reason I wanted to only keep it to like 5 building types, is because number one, I think that I can get plenty of gameplay out of the 5 buildings. But number two, just to limit the scope so that I'm not going crazy trying to, get so much done that is just like, for me as an inexperienced person at art, would just be almost impossible to do. And I see a few more people in chat. Welcome. I'm just going to repeat this as people pop in and out, but this is one of the last development streams for this game. So I'm going to do 2 more. One's going to be on the 25th. Then the game goes into early access on the 27th. and then there's one more after that on August 1st. And after that, I won't be doing dev streams. So if you have questions, basically any game dev related questions, I'm probably going to be taking like a long break from live development streams. Feel free to shoot them out in the chat, like anytime. Now is good, or in the next 2 streams would also be good, and I'll engage with you. All right. Okay. Nice solid square shapes here. And we don't need this up here. One of my favorite game designers, his name is Chris Taylor. He made, he was like the lead designer behind Total Annihilation, and he also did like Dungeon Siege, Supreme Commander, and a number of other games. But I've heard, one of the things I've heard him say is that he feels like one of the things that's kind of changed in the industry is that it used to be when game designers would put together stuff, they would go through the effort of caring very deeply about every single pixel of a game. Oh, gosh, that was a bad brushstroke, whatever that was. I hit the wrong key there. But yeah, every single pixel is important, is one of the very meaningful things that I heard him say one time. And that really kind of stuck with me, because even if I don't pay attention to every single pixel, it's still something that like I care about and like something that I want to do. And so that was just like a big thing for me. And as I go through and kind of put together these textures, that's one of the things I'm kind of trying to deeply care about is, don't just kind of do like a quick spray paint job and call it a day. You can't do that. If you do that, people can tell that you like, it feels like you don't care. Even if you did care, it feels like you don't care. And if you have a deadline, deadlines are so ridiculous because, like, deadlines are these arbitrary points in time where, like, the world will just keep going if you don't meet a deadline. Okay, like, yes, you may be spending a bunch of money, and that's one of the nice things about me just working on this on my own is that like I said, like earlier when I was talking about building a team, like that's one of the things you just don't have to worry about when you're working by yourself. You just have to worry about your own bills, right, and your own health. But other than that, you don't have to worry about money. You worry about making something really great and really good, and that's your priority. Everything else just takes a back seat. And if so that's why, like, when my original goal was to release in on July 27th, which instead of releasing on July 27th, now that's just my early access date. But if the game's not done, I'm not gonna like just throw out a bunch of garbage and call it a day. Like, I'm just gonna keep going. And so, yeah, it's going to enter early access, and I'm just going to keep working on it. And that's how it works. That's how it should work, right? That's also how it should work with studios, but what game studios have not figured out yet is that you basically need to fund the studio off of stuff that is not game sales. Game sales are not a recurring revenue source. They are, like, basically every single unit sold of a game should be bonus money. What makes a ton of more sense is, let me make sure I haven't destroyed these pixels here. That's not what I'm going for. Wait a second, what? Hang on, let me zoom out. But yeah, like, all these companies are still doing these traditional funding models, and for some reason they all struggle with it. None of them seem to like buy assets in other companies and then use those as a way of staying afloat and funding their business. Just because you're a game studio, that doesn't mean anything. But for some reason, game studios are stuck in this idea that they have to be only game studios to stay afloat as a business. And that if they're not making a game, they're not making their money. And the thing is if you have capital, you can do anything you want with that capital. If you have cash, money is money, right? And so you could put those into investments, and you can take the return on that investment and use that to fund your efforts instead of relying on sales. And now, granted, this is very, very difficult to do if you don't have that pile of money to start out with. But one of the big mistakes that studios make, in my opinion, is that they get one success under their belt, and then they upscale and they try to grow, and they use all that money that they earned off of a game as what they should pay the bills with. And I don't care if you're a giant AAA studio, that's a bad decision business-wise. It's extremely risky. Instead, what they should do, and I'm not even kidding, is like buy a bunch of dividend-paying stock and, like, well, probably not General Electric, but, and I'm not going to recommend stocks here on the live stream. I could get in trouble if I do that. So nothing I'm saying is financial advisement or advice or legal advice or anything of the sort, right? But don't hold me liable. But seriously, like a dividend-paying stock, or some kind of oh gosh, the scroll bar on Photoshop is just going on its own now. Come on, Photoshop. Jeez, just computer can't handle Photoshop. Okay. But yeah, some type of an investment that pays out very routinely. You know, and in Kalling Kingdom, you invest in the world market. You ride the market up, and when it goes down into colossal failure, you pull your money out for a little while, but that's part of the game. That's part of how you prosper in the game, right? And the inspiration for that comes from real life. People don't worry about their retirement accounts. Companies don't worry about having plan Bs, and that leads to so much risk and instability financially that that's why we lose so many game studios, and we have lost just the best game studios over the years from that. We've lost Ensemble Studios, who made the first several Age of Empires games, 1 through 3, and Age of Mythology. They're also the studio behind Halo Wars. If you've heard of Halo Wars, they made the first one. But they don't exist anymore because they couldn't get out of being completely dependent on Microsoft, basically. Westwood Studios, that made Command and Conquer and made probably the best Monopoly game on PC ever. Westwood did a ton of stuff over the years. I don't even know everything Westwood did. They made a graphic adventure game. I forget the name of it. It's from the early 90s or something. Extremely talented people that just should not have gone out of business ever. Okay? And they did. And it's tragic. I feel like I feel like companies that make these fantastic products, that the only reason we get those products is because there are great talented people working at these companies. And I don't, no disrespect to the leadership of those places. They did the best that they could with the circumstances, I'm sure. But it's just really sad that overall people let those studios die. Another one of my favorite studios from a while ago is Volition. And they got bought by Deep Silver, and they ended up, they're the ones behind Red Faction and Saints Row and Descent Free Space. And they're one of those studios that I feel like they kind of sold out just so that they could survive. And good for them, honestly, because I'd rather those people still be around making, I don't care if it's Saint Row 27. At least they're still hanging in there. So anyway. Okay, so let's zoom out. Okay. I'm going to kind of touch this up over here. We don't need this little smudge over here. That was done by mistake. There we go. I don't even know if you can see that with the resolution of the live stream. Oh my goodness. It's already been 50 minutes. I just did this for almost an hour. What in the world? What is happening to my lifespan? All right. I'm almost ready, it looks like. Almost ready to start doing some refinement here on the door frame. Okay, here we go. If anyone in the chat knows of some other really great game studios that we don't have anymore, feel free to throw them out. I'm sure there's a cajillion of them out there that you could name. Another really disappointing company that made horrible decisions was Interplay. Even though, like Interplay was just like a household name back in, the 90s. And now they're just like, they're basically like a shell company. Like they still own some IPs and stuff, and they just kind of like license some stuff every now and then. But like, it's basically like probably some guy in an office, right? Like basically runs Interplay without really doing much of anything. They certainly don't. To my knowledge, I don't think they publish or develop anything new, really. Probably no new IPs. But I think Interplay was basically the publisher for Descent and Descent Free Space, and I think they did Earthworm Jim and like Clay Fighter and like some other stuff. If anyone remembers Clay Fighter, probably nobody. I know people remember Earthworm Jim. The funny thing is like people always remember Earthworm Jim. They never remember like the other stuff that those same devs worked on. For some reason, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that like way more marketing dollars were spent on Earthworm Jim or something. I don't know. A lot of artists also like kind of kept Earthworm Jim alive. They just really liked the artwork, and they still do artwork of that character. Okay. I think I need to change the colors here. What the heck is this asking me? No. Escape. View properties. Okay. There we go. I think my computer really hates having Blender and Unity and Photoshop in all at the same time. So I'm going to close out Unity here. Okay. You know what? Now that I've just done this cleanup, let me export this and see just see how it looks now. Obviously far from done, but I need to just see how this is looking. And I wonder if it'll update in Blender automatically. Probably not. What if I render? Nope. Do I have to reload? Is it like a temporary? Let me try reloading the file. Do I have this saved? Save. I'm just gonna restart Blender. I'm currently using the beta of version 2.8 for render, or for Blender. Sorry, I was thinking about their rendering engine, and I said the word render and instead of Blender. Okay. Okay, we're back open. So file, open recent, farm 2. Okay. Render. And resize. So I guess the good news is that it's not looking like some sort of horrible, like, smudgy mess so much. There's still a little bit of that like gray smudging going on there. And I might keep a little bit of that, but now I need to start like really putting some effort into the color. It looks pretty clean. There's a little bit of a problem here. There's a gray line going over the top of the door frame. I don't know if those watching can see that. But that's kind of a problem. So I'm going to have to see what I can do about that. It might just be as simple as like making a tiny little adjustment in Photoshop. I need to figure out where that's mapped to. Well, anyway, we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Just about. So again, if you have any last minute questions for me, please throw them out. And I'll do a little Q&A here in the last few minutes as I'm kind of closing things out. But here you go. This is basically like where things are going. By the way, I don't tell people this enough on live stream, but there is an IndieDB page for Kalling Kingdom. So if you go to indiedb.com, and I'll just show you how you can do this. Go to indiedb.com, and on the top right, there's a search bar. And if you type in Kalling Kingdom and then hit the icon, there's a Kalling Kingdom page here on IndieDB. There's a way to basically sign up an account and follow this page. It would help me tremendously if those watching could do that. And it's also a really good way, like until I get a website up for the game itself, to like follow the updates and to like basically see written blog posts, screenshots, gameplay footage, and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to be throwing it all into here. There's a little bit here so far, but anyway, that would really help me out. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'm not seeing any questions come in on the chat, so I will just say goodbye for now, and thank you. The recording will be up on YouTube of this stream if you want to catch it later, and we have the whole playlist there on the YouTube channel. So if you go to elegacorp.com, the community tab, go to YouTube, that will take you straight to the Elega Corp YouTube channel. Highly recommend you subscribe here. If you go to the playlist tab here, I have the Kalling Kingdom dev streams in their own playlist, so you can click view full playlist, and we have every single one now. Each stream is about an hour long, so with this being stream number 15, that's a little over 15 hours of total development time that I've cataloged and documented here. And it's a lot of fun going back and looking at like the very first few streams and just seeing the progress that's been made. Like there was a point at one time where like it's like, so I'm just seeing this in the screenshot. Like if I go to stream 4 here, like look, let me scrub through to here. Look at the.
I'm gonna want to change that.
Look at the color. It's purple. This game started out purple and light blue. And then like you can just see just so many other things that have come along and continue to make progress. So things are way better. They're going to continue to get way better, and I'm really excited about it. So all right, guys, I'll drop off there. Thank you, and I will see you soon on the 25th, this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And if anything changes, the elegacorp.com stream schedule will be updated. Thanks.